You are listening to Future Voices, a podcast brought to you by Beha Futures Foundation.
Hello everyone and welcome to our new season of Futures Voices. I've been told this is season 2 and it's episode 2. We recorded a lot of episodes in season 1, so hopefully season 2 will be just as exciting. My name is Eddie Chustovic and you probably listened to a lot of my podcasts in season 1. We've had a lot of guest appearances in season 1 and season 2. But I'm back, and I'm glad that I'm back for this particular episode because we're speaking to one of the most interesting people, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but the entire region. His name is Paul Cronin from Adriatic Metals. And the story is super interesting because we're not speaking to someone who's Bosnian, but someone who's by many people considered honorary Bosnian, someone that is doing incredible things right in the heart of Bosnia. We'll hear more about that in a second. But let me just give you a quick introduction to our guest today. So Paul is the co-founder of managing director and CEO of Adriatic Metals, where he brings together 20 years of experience in corporate finance, investment banking, funds management, and commodity trading. His previous roles have all shared a strong European mining focus, and he's a passionate and experienced leader. In addition to his role in Adriatic Metals, he's also the chairman of ASX-listed Black Dragon Gold Corporation and director of ASX-listed Taruga Minerals. For those of you that are not familiar with what ASX means, think of it as the Australian Stock Exchange. These are serious companies, serious people, and one of the most serious people that we've had a chance to interview in our podcast is Paul. So Paul, a very warm welcome to Futures Voices.
Eddie, thanks for having me. Really honoured to be here.
It's a real excitement to have you here on our podcast, Paul. There's a lot of stories in the public about what you guys are up to. Pros, cons, good and bad. But I think the best thing we can do here is speak to the source of information and find out exactly what's going on in the heart of Bosnia. What are you guys up to with Adriatic Metals? And talk about some of the benefits of what's happening. But before we get into all of that, Paul, how did you get connected to Bosnia in the first place?
Look, I mean, it was largely through this project. It was brought to me by a Bosnian Australian lawyer who had purchased these assets early last decade and was struggling to get anyone to pay any real attention to them. I came out here with a mining engineer and a geologist in December 2016, and we had a good look at the assets and we saw potential, and we decided to invest in that potential. Fast forward 5 years, this is now the biggest private investment in Bosnia's history. It is reshaping a town that the prospects for that town were fairly limited and are now looking very prosperous and healthy. And it's making minor little changes that are improving people's lives, not just in our near mine communities, but I think across Bosnia. So I'm really pleased that we took that step and decided to make this investment. I now, as you said, I now live here, and I've been living here since the end of the first COVID lockdown. And I love it. I think, Bosnian lifestyle, very, very similar to Australia. I think very similar culturally. And I love working with the young people that are here. They're very enthusiastic, very, very capable, looking for opportunities. And when they get presented those opportunities, they're grabbing them and they're moving forward. It's been astonishing since starting to work here in the beginning of 2017 to see some of those young staff now become total leaders in their industry, not just in Bosnia, but across the Balkans and indeed across the world. That's the kind of skills that they're developing.
It's quite an amazing story, and I'm particularly excited because you're from Australia. I also happen to spend half of my time in Australia, half of my time in Bosnia. And you've been able to forge these relationships between Bosnian Australians and Bosnians living in Bosnia, but also Australians who are now starting to flow back and forth. In fact, I've had a lot of contact with individuals who spoke very highly of you and very highly of the organization. It's very exciting to see this connection between Australia and Bosnia. For years, I've been a lone ranger and establishing these links. We're very far apart. But one thing that Australia does well is mining, and we have a lot of expertise in this area. So tell me a little bit about what you're up to in the town of Varesh. It's a very small place. It's not very well known to a lot of people around the world. Probably not very well known to a lot of Bosnians as well, especially those living in other countries around the world, second generation Bosnians. What's actually happening in Varesh? What are you guys actually up to?
Look, Varesh has got an interesting history. You know, it was essentially founded in the 1890s when the Austro-Hungarians at the time discovered a huge iron ore deposit just outside what is now the town of Varesh. That iron ore facility was so significant to the Central European economy that the Austro-Hungarians invested in roads, rail, built a town that in 1991 was 27,000 people. Now Varesh is around 5,000 people because the iron ore mine was flooded in 1993 and is now a 125, 130 metre swimming lake that those who still live in the town get to enjoy. So there is a mining history there. There's a strong mining culture. The coat of arms for the municipality of Varesh is a mining coat of arms. And what we have done is we've obviously discovered a deposit. We're now investing, or have invested, $250 million in building a mine and a plant, building a new road in the municipality that connects the northern part of the municipality to the south, so that remote villages now have better access to Varesh town, to Zenica, to Kaka, and to Sarajevo. And in line with those investments, we've also done partnerships with private healthcare groups to create better medical facilities in the town. We've just initiated a high school technical program for mining and earth sciences. And we've got 19 students in the local high school that are learning to be miners. And all of these little things are really reshaping the future of Varesh into a very, very prosperous one. And so we've got about 700 people working with us at the moment. A lot of those are contractors. But we'll have about 450 to 500 people there permanently. And a lot of those people are young. We made the decision to hire young, invest in that youth and development, because we believe that will give us a better return over the longer period of time. And when I talk about return, I'm not talking about financial return. I'm talking about health and safety return, and I'm talking about sustainability return. So it will create a much better sustainable environment for a mine that's probably, at the moment we've got 20 years of mine life, but it's probably going to be there for 40 or 50 years because our exploration programs are still discovering more mineral deposits in this little area just north of Sarajevo.
So it's a very, very rich part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. You've discovered, obviously people discovered that a long time ago. Now you're rediscovering what some people discovered a long time ago in a different form. It's fascinating that you are basically rebuilding this community. And one of the things that's really, really appealing is that your approach to recruitment isn't just focused on draining Bosnia of whatever workforce is remaining, because a lot of people say there's not a lot of workforce remaining, and we've seen that in practice. But you are also making serious attempts to attract Bosnians and Herzegovinians who have high qualifications, living abroad, who have been living abroad for a long time or a short time. And you are attempting to bring them back to Bosnia. I am absolutely in love with that idea. I've been propagating that for a very long time. And I'm glad to hear that someone like yourself and your organization is making a real effort to do that. Tell us a little bit about the efforts in terms of bringing back some of that talent from all over the world back into Bosnia, regardless of whether they're physically in Varesh or in Sarajevo or somewhere else. I think they can make a real contribution and be a game changer in Bosnian economy.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you look at the Australian mining industry, most of it is what we call fly in, fly out. So you go and you do 2 weeks or 3 weeks on site, and then you come back for 2 or 3 weeks. You're doing long days when you're there. You're doing 12-hour shifts, and you come back and you enjoy time off. There's a lot of guys in the Australian mining industry who are the children of people who left Bosnia in the early 1990s. And they speak the language, they understand the culture, they come back here for their summer holidays to catch up with all the families everybody does here. And they love it. And we've been able to find them, and we've been able to say to them, rather than flying from Brisbane to, the Congo, once a month, why don't you just come back and live in Bosnia? We can offer you a role where you can see your family every night, right? You can go and do your shift and go home and have dinner with your wife or your husband. Put your kids to bed and have a normal lifestyle. And they are loving that concept. And of course, you come here, it's a beautiful country. You've got skiing in the winter. You've got the most beautiful coastline, 3 hours drive away in the summer. There's endless amounts of things to do, particularly in outdoor activities like whitewater rafting and hiking, mountain biking. It offers an absolutely amazing lifestyle. And for the diaspora, why wouldn't you come back and do that, particularly if you're still getting paid the same amount of money you were to live in, Sydney, fly to Africa for work and pay high Australian taxes?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the lifestyle, you've hit the nail on the head. The lifestyle is very, very hard to find in many other places, that in such close proximity that you have so many things on offer, and yet you can earn a great living working for an organization like yours and really be part of something that's transformative. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for besides the salary. It's being part of something that historically can be a game changer, to be part of something that is much greater than the individual income as well. So amazing things are happening there, Paul. I want to touch on one more thing. Often mining industries are seen as very dirty, as very environmentally damaging, harmful, et cetera, but mining has changed so much since those bleak photos that we used to see in people in mines and getting dirty, and a lot of deaths happening and all of the negative stuff and all the negative spin that's been happening. What's changed in mining, and what are you doing differently in Varesh?
Look, I think there's two core focuses for us. One is health and safety. We are building a health and safety system and a health and safety culture that has not been seen in European mining before. It is our core focus. It constitutes a lot of our performance remuneration, that we have to do things very safely. And it is a part of our business that is the key focus. But the other area, and just to give you a bit of history, Eddie, I used to work for a bank doing investments in the mining industry, both equity and debt. And we were watching our European investments over many years sort of just flounder, never really going anywhere. But as we started to see this global decarbonisation effort, and I think particularly back in 2015, 16, we saw Donald Trump starting to emerge, and he's talking about deglobalization. We realised that Europe's going to have a mining industry. The problem with Europe, unlike Australia or northern Canada or up in the Andes in South America, is that you're never more than 20 kilometres away from a population centre, and whether it's a village or a town or a city. And the people that live in those villages in particular don't live there because they don't have a choice. They live there because they want to. They live there because it offers them a lifestyle that they enjoy. And for a mining company like ours, we've got to be very conscious of not just what the community is, but what it wants to be. And that's where we spend a lot of time here, trying to understand from people, talking to people. I would go and talk to local communities. Quite often during COVID, we go on a Sunday and we go to, some of the various churches, and we do COVID tests after Mass on a Sunday. And we'd sit there and talk to people about what do you want for your children? What do you want for your grandchildren? And we started to get it in our head, right? Okay, we're going to design a project that can fit not only what the community is now, but what it wants to be. But so if you look at the Raputsa mine, the underground mine, it is tiny in terms of its surface footprint for a mine that generates that much economic output relative to the end of the world. So we said, we're going to focus on high margin. We're going to keep the mines small. And most importantly, we're going to make them underground. We're not going to have open pits because open pits are really ugly. They're really dusty. They're really dirty, and no one likes them. So if you look at the footprint for Raputsa, it's 36 hectares. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. You put it into context. It's smaller than probably the sports facilities in most Australian high schools. So, we designed this thing in a way, and we built the surface infrastructure in a specific place that means you can't see that mine from anywhere on the ground, from any road, from any house, from anything. And it doesn't impact the visual aesthetics of this beautiful community. Of course, if you want to stick a drone in the air, you're going to see it. And then we've said, you know what, we're going to build the plant. We're not going to try and level out more ground on this very steep terrain because that will require more deforestation, more risk to water. What we're going to do is we're going to take an existing contaminated site from the 1970s. We're going to clean it up and we're going to rebuild the plant there. And we're going to design the plant in such a way that we can fit it into this much smaller footprint. And all we've got to do is think about the timing and logistics of movement of ore. And so in the way we've designed the whole project, it's to have the most minimal footprint possible, but also get rid of some old environmental liabilities. And you'll be seeing we're going to be doing a lot more of that. There's a tailings facility in Barish that is listed as one of Europe's top 10 potential environmental hazards. Next year, we're going to be fixing that. We're going to turn that into quite a picturesque lake, which I think will end up being a bit of a tourist attraction, quite frankly. So, that's the mindset we've taken. And if we're going to be successful in Europe, and companies like Adriatic Metals are going to help Europe with its energy and metal transition, which it has to have, Europe can't keep buying things from Africa. I can produce what I'm producing in Barish in Australia. I can ship it, but my carbon emissions in shipping it from Australia to Europe double. And carbon, whilst no one thinks about it in dollar terms right now, is going to become very, very expensive. It is going to fundamentally shift the way the world works economically, because everybody with half a brain on this planet recognizes we've got to do something really quickly to cut our carbon emissions and to reverse climate change. So, mines like ours, they're going to pop up all over Europe over the next 10 years. We're already seeing huge investments in Scandinavia, in Spain, in Portugal, in the UK, of all places, saying we've got to develop our own supply chains, and it's going to change investment. Bosnia, being on the northern part of the Tethyan mineral belt, right in the heart of Europe, close to Germany, close to Austria, close to all these industrial centres, it is literally sitting on a gold mine, even though we don't have much gold, and it's got to recognise the future value of this industry to Bosnia, but it's got to be done properly. And that's the sort of standard that we're trying to set here and saying we're going to do things properly. We'll always be criticised. And when you have a young staff, sometimes they make mistakes, right? I've got a lot of grumpy old men like me working on site, who are trying to develop these young staff, but, we can't watch everything, and occasionally, something goes wrong. Our challenge is to just build in more systems, more processes, more procedures that minimize the risk, of those sorts of events happening. And when you're in a construction phase of a mine, it's the worst time. Right? You during construction, you can't control surface water. You can't, you don't have all the facilities that you need. You're having to truck a lot of material in. For us, it's a lot of concrete. And as a result of that, you can agitate local communities a little bit, but it's only for a short period of time. And once you enter steady state production, which we will be in a couple months' time, then everything just gets a lot easier for everybody. And I think as our staff get more experience and more exposure to this business, to this project, they'll get far better off at managing those sorts of risks. So, it is an industry that is criticised, and it's an industry that is quite often rightly criticised. But it's not an easy business. And what we say to people is, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. There might be a few little hiccups along the way, but give us a couple of years and you'll really see the benefits of this type of investment done in this way. And I think particularly in Varish, in that community, they see that already. They're absolutely seeing what this is doing to their town.
I think you hit the nail on the head again. I mean, the best practices are being brought into the country. And people can always look at things very negatively, but if we consider the mining approach of Bosnian companies historically, then we can clearly say that some of the practices that you're bringing in are also indirectly modernizing other approaches. And hopefully some of your approaches will brush off on some of the existing mining operations that are there in Bosnia, which are, let's face it, probably 30, 40, 50 years behind in terms of certain practices. Let's not even get into occupational health and safety. That's a big area that I think they need to improve a lot on. But emissions, in terms of the way they do things and efficiencies, absolutely every element of Bosnian mining needs to be improved. And I'm very glad that someone from Australia, where mining has been a big part of our economy and has also been criticised a lot, as you rightfully said, and that criticism has meant that we are getting better and better and almost perfecting the art of mining and doing it in a way that is acceptable and sustainable and that creates real value to the economy. So, Paul, thanks very much for all the efforts in Bosnia there. Speaking of young people, speaking of all the opportunities, I think we can't avoid this type of question. What are you doing with young people in Varesh? What other opportunities exist for young people in the organisation? Obviously, we touch on a lot of STEM and a lot of engineering, but in general, what is the future looking like for Adriatic Metals and young people? What's the relationship looking like?
Well, if you look at the average age of our staff, if you exclude the international expatriates that are here, the average age is below 30. And that makes us the youngest mining company in the world. And we've done that deliberately. In that we're bringing in graduates who've got a little bit of experience. We're being graduates straight out of university. We've built a student camp now where we've signed agreements with 6 universities in the region for graduates to come and get some experience and practical experience. Some will come and do their professional exams with us, and then others will be employed. But in addition to that, we're not just catering for university graduates. We're also catering for those kids that want to come out of school and just get in a trade. And we're working with a group out of Brisbane now to develop, you will be familiar with this term, Eddie, a TAFE, which is basically going to teach electrical, welding, pipe fitting, those core skills that we can't live without, that are in high demand in other areas of Europe and are primarily one of the major sources of Bosnia's brain drain. So we're going to say, do you know what? We're going to come in, we're going to develop those skills with you, and where they're going to offer you a great job and a great career. And we're going to sit down and talk about where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 10 and 20 years. And we're going to help you map that out as part of this company and our broader group. And as we expand, we don't see, we're a British company by registration and we have an office in London. That's not our head office. Our head office is here in Sarajevo. This is where our technical services and our brain trusts are going to be based, whether we're working on a project in Varish or we're working on a project in Stockholm. We're changing the way people think. This is not the Outwater anymore. This is headquarters. And that's going to create a lot of opportunities for young Bosnian kids to develop those skills at home and then go and apply those skills in Portugal, in southern Spain, in Scandinavia, in North Africa and other places. And I think it's that mindset that the company has that says, well, we've got this fantastically well-educated, motivated, competent, capable pool of people. If we can stop them going and doing a crap job in Germany, keep them here, develop them a little bit, they're going to be hugely valuable human resources to us as we continue to grow the company with its headquarters in Sarajevo.
Absolutely brilliant point. I'm glad that you touched on this workforce issue, because for many, many years, and I've been telling people about this all the time, that higher education in Bosnia, but also in Australia for many parts, has been the primary focus of talent development, forgetting the importance of all of the trades that we need in order to run the economy. Australia made a very smart move quite a few years ago now by investing heavily in the TAFE sector, by making basically TAFE free. So for those of our listeners who are not familiar with the TAFE concept, it's basically between high school, university training, but it's actually a trade training. And Australia invested a lot of money to ensure that we kept the trades going. We still have issues with trades. Let's not touch on that topic again, but I think we're in a much better position than what we were 10, 15 years ago. It was looking very, very bleak. Bosnia is looking at a very similar problem. Part of our problem is that the borders are open. Bosnians can travel to Germany, to Sweden, to Austria and work for a significantly higher salary. On the other hand, not many people are now studying the trades because they're seen as dirty. Why would I do that when I can go to university and study something much more fancier? My hands are clean and I can sit in an office and click a few buttons and make a lot of money, which is just not true anymore. I mean, that's the reality of it now. Sometimes trades can make a lot more money than some of these engineers and doctors and so on. So I'm glad that you're investing in this sector as well. Just briefly, let's touch on some of the technologies, because we talk about the sustainability element of what you guys are doing in Varesh. Amazing, really good practices. What technologies are involved for our listeners? For those of them that are not familiar with what happens in a mining operation, what technologies can they expect to see? What are some of the new things that are being introduced that people might be familiar with or not familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, the technology in flotation hasn't really changed very much. What has been changing is the energy consumption. And one of our big focuses has been trying to design a plant and choose equipment that's going to minimize the amount of energy that we consume and therefore the amount of carbon that we produce. We are also now looking at our broader energy. Yes, we're building solar farms in partnership with a Norwegian company. We're putting our own solar facilities. We're looking at using pumped hydro, so using solar to basically pump water from one level of a lake to another level of a lake, and then allowing it to go down during the night and creating energy from those. So they're the sorts of technology developments. But we're also looking at the major developments in electric haulage trucking, anything that really reduces our carbon footprint. Well, some of the things that people don't know is, the Bosnian laws require you to use a certain type of explosive. We're introducing the Bosnian mining industry to different types of explosives that are safer, that create less residue, that create less overbreak in the rock. And so we're introducing these new technologies into the Bosnian mining industry. And I think, it'll be well adopted and well received. I can easily see Bosnia going down to the next level of the value chain and creating smelters, because Bosnia has so much hydroelectricity already installed, but also capacity. If you can create a green smelter like Boliden have done in Odda in Norway, where it's 100% renewable energy powered, you're producing the greenest metals in the world. And those green metals, the companies, big industrial companies like BMW, Mercedes, Daimler and others are paying a premium for those metals because they have to look at the carbon emissions in their supply chain. And so there's this huge amount of opportunity for Bosnia to embrace new technologies off the existing asset base that it's already got. If you try to sort of simplify it into, well, this is a 1 + 1 = 2.5 moment for Bosnia and the Bosnian economy, and that's where I think the opportunity really lies.
Amazing, Paul. I'm glad that you're talking about this because I think that's where Bosnia can make a difference. We often talk about we don't have 1 billion people in Bosnia. We don't have, the technologies that the rest of the world is perhaps accessing so easily, but we have a lot of potential. And I think you're finding ways to present that potential as a value add or something that we can really take advantage of. So thank you very much for touching on that topic. We're running out of time, Paul, in our podcast here. So many topics to talk about. I just want to mention again that you are partnering up with us for the Futures Leaders Summit, which will happen in Sarajevo from the 15th to 17th of December. Dom Mladih, Skanderia. Hopefully you can join us as well, Paul, and make an appearance there. I think a lot of young people would love to meet you. But besides that, we'd love to see some of your staff visit us as well and look at opportunities for collaboration. Talking about collaboration, I just want to touch on one more point in terms of how you're getting on with other organizations in Bosnia. What sort of collaborations have you set up? We spoke a little bit about collaborations in terms of Vareš and setting up exciting new initiatives in the town. How are other companies perceiving what you're doing in Vareš? Has there been any good collaboration? Can we see any future collaborations, and what can we expect to see?
Well, there's going to be a lot. I mean, there already has been. We've brought now in 6 foreign companies who made the decision to invest in Bosnia. So that's more FDI into the country, which is a real positive thing. Where we are also doing a lot of collaboration is with NGOs. So we're working with the likes of USAID and others to try and create platforms of opportunities, particularly around tourism. Because we believe that mining in the way Adriatic Metals does it and ecotourism can coexist in the same area. And we're going to prove that in Vareš as a little prototype. So we're forming a lot of partnerships with NGOs that are designed to help. So, just to give you one example, Eddie, we formed a partnership with Unitic, the insurance company here in Bosnia, who we took out insurance for all of our staff, and Eurofarm, a private health provider in Bosnia. And we've created a new clinic that is basically free to use for people in Vareš in a tripartite approach. And it's a new model of healthcare that potentially could be rolled out elsewhere. These are the things that we want to demonstrate can be done. That don't put the onus always on government to resolve people's problems, right? Sometimes companies can get together and resolve a lot of people's problems for them. And I think that's what we're demonstrating here. There's a new way of doing things collaboratively, which can add a lot of benefit. And I think Adriatic Metals is really just trying to demonstrate how that can be done. And hopefully it'll be successful.
Absolutely. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. As you said, there's always bumps on the road. There's always things that can go wrong. But I think that being transparent, being open with the public, playing a big part in the community as you're doing community consultation, getting people involved, in time, you will get the majority of people on board. And I think we'll recognize this as a historic opportunity for Bosnia to take on best practices. And to remember, Paul Cronin is the Australian who came to Bosnia and played a major role in modernizing some of these processes that have historically been seen as very dirty and old school, modernizing them in a sense that we embrace them and they're part of our economic output in the collective sense. So, Paul, thank you very much for spending some time with us here on Futures Voices. A real pleasure to have you here and talk about everything that you're doing. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can talk about. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I do invite you to join us at Futures Leaders Summit in Sarajevo. It's going to be fantastic. For everyone else that's listening, we're expecting about 500 guests from all over Bosnia, a lot of young people, a lot of young professionals as well. And we'll also have a lot of guests joining us who reside in other countries from the United States all the way through to Australia. And I think it's going to be an amazing place to network, make new connections, establish new relationships, and also source new talent for your organization. So, Paul, thank you very much again for joining us here.
Thanks, Eddie. Really appreciate it.
There you have it, guys. Paul Cronin from Adriatic Metals, Futures Voices podcast, episode 2, season 2. What do we have in store next? You're going to have to wait and hear all about it. But we had Paul from Adriatic Metals tell us all about the amazing things that are happening in a tiny little place in central Bosnia called Bareš. Take care, guys.